Good evening, spiritual warriors. Welcome to Spiritual Warriorship. We're discussing and reading from books by His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami. And we've been discussing from Spiritual Warrior books, and we're now on Spiritual Warrior 6. I hope that all of you who were here last week, or let me give the title of the book, Spiritual Warrior 6, Beyond Terrorism, Fanaticism, and War, Discover the Peace Solution. And in these days and times, that's quite a statement, and we're looking forward to that. I'm finding myself greatly intrigued, fascinated, and almost saying, oh, Gurudev, you gave us so much. But the title, we're now up to chapter 4, the title, Different Conceptions of Religion. And we've been through a number of wonderful points. I'm not going to just want to remember we went through, what was it, researching the goal of theology, and he gave us 3 questions we should ask if we are entering a path of some kind. 3 questions to make sure we're comfortable in that path. He spoke of 2 types of religious practitioners, if you recall, internal and external. And then we had 4 types of motivated worship. So we've covered quite a bit. And tonight we're covering personalism as the ultimate conclusion. But before I go there, I wanted to review a section before that, just a little bit, to help us remember. Now remember, I said, if what you're hearing, if you do not have these books, any, or this one in particular, you can purchase them at Krishna.com store. And they're really worth having in your library. So, I hope all of you are well and alert and ready. So, last week, he spoke of to us about personalism versus impersonalism. And I'm just going to review a short passage of that so we can go right into tonight's discussion on personalism. He says, as we deepen our examination, we will also discover that people have different conceptions of God, which sometimes stem from their own experiences. Now that first sentence, as we deepen, he's been telling us from the very beginning, we need to deepen our understanding of the scriptures and religions and theologies so that we can find the right path for us in this day and time. So he's assuming that we are deepening. Now he says that some people think of God as being free from variegatedness. They feel that the ultimate state of God consciousness involves a type of nirvana, void of relationships and heterogeneity. I remember during my years in the 60s, 70s searching, there was an expression we used that, how was it? Nature abhors a vacuum. So there's no void or vacuum. Other people conceive of God as an expression of universal intelligence and ultimate divine light. And I went through that period too. It was find the light, you see the light, we'll go right into the light. And there was an expression of, there's one mind, that mind is God, and that mind is my mind now. That was another study I was doing. But it was giving some sense that it's God, but no attraction, no relationship. So this is what he's trying to help us understand. Now, he says some people are connected with systems and practices that allow them to experience a cosmic consciousness or samadhi. Now, such a system might lead to an experience of oneness with all that is, or a feeling that they are all that is. Others feel that the ultimate connection with God involves their ability to honor morality and ethics. Yet, other people see God through objects in their environment, such as trees, the moon, the sun, animals, and so on. And it's interesting, I remember going through that phase, and it was, there's the tree, that's God. Of course, now we know it's God's energy, but it was really not having an understanding, as he keeps telling us, getting a deeper understanding. But it's marvelous as I'm reading and recalling the stages we go through, the how different studies are like stepping stones to get to understanding who you are and your relationship with God. He says that there are those who try to connect with the Godhead in order to experience divine personality and divine variegatedness. So that takes us to tonight's subject where we plan to start, and that section is called Personalism as the Ultimate Conclusion. I remember when I began studying, when I first met Bhakti Tirtha Swami and the disciples, and in one of the classes, the person giving the class was talking and said, and God is a person. And for me, I wasn't shocked. It was like, oh, okay. Because I had been talking with God, looked like all my life. And to know that I was talking to a person, and it's not a gross material person, you get to understand that, but a spiritual personality. It was really a step ahead for me at that time. So let's look closer into this conception of personalism. Book needs to come up a little higher. Excuse me a minute. Okay. He says, in Islam, the Hadith describes Muhammad's ascension, called the Majah, in which he went to the lower planets, to the medium planets, and to the higher planetary system. The angel Gabriel, who was very instrumental in offering the world the Quran, escorted Muhammad to these different realms. However, it explains in Islamic theology that when they arrived at Sidratul Muntaha, Angel Gabriel could not go any further. At this point, Muhammad went beyond heaven, and met Allah face to face. And that's an important point there. He went beyond heaven to meet Allah face to face. So that's saying that there's a spiritual world beyond heaven. The Prophet had a relationship with Allah face to face. They met face to face. And it was in a mood of friendship. Muhammad continues by describing how Allah put his hand between his shoulders and gave him divine wisdom. Furthermore, we also find in Islamic theology that, quote, seeing Allah is the ultimate joy of the hereafter, the most precious gift of Allah. The greatest knowledge will lead to the greatest exchange of love. The greatest knowledge will lead to the greatest exchange of love. And as he's quoting from these scriptures, that's what we'll discover, the love. Now he goes on that the Bible explains how in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, which might lead us to ask, where was God before he created these places? It indicates that he was in an eternal environment separate from both heaven and the earth. Now again, as we go deep into these theologies, we will find that similarities between many of the different religious traditions okay, and again he's emphasizing, I realize how many times he's used this expression of going deeper. It's not superficial. If you're interested, you go deeper, you search, you study, you see what the saints and sages have said. So, as we go deeper into these theologies, we will find similarities between many of the different religious traditions. Unfortunately, though, they have sometimes been misrepresented or watered down by people pursuing economic or political considerations rather than unconditional love, devotion, and service to God. And that's the basis of any bona fide religion, to bring us to that point of understanding and of unconditional love, unmotivated love, and devotion and service to God. That's when you know who you are. You're a servant of God. He goes on mentioning the Torah, mentions how the Lord spoke to Moses face to face, as a man speaks to a friend. That's Exodus 33:11. Many people consider these descriptions to be conceptual or allegorical because they cannot understand their deeper significance. If you go deeper, you get a deeper understanding. The Songs of Solomon in the Bible is a loving exchange between humankind and God. However, most times when people read the book in the Bible, they just view it as poetry because they cannot understand that a living entity could have such a deep connection with God due to his or her purity. So that connection with God is there, it's available to us, but we need to work towards purification, and that's why most scriptures, especially the ancient scriptures, give us like step by step for purifying ourselves so that we can meet God face to face. In fact, I'm just recalling when I was studying, going to the lectures of Bhaktitirtha Swami. One of the classes, he was talking, and the phrase that jumped out at me, he said, "You can see God face to face this lifetime." And all I remember, the tears started rolling down, and it was like my soul was saying, this is what I've been waiting to hear. And again, I was hooked. He had a way of hooking and pulling us in, like fishing. But yeah, and that was early. Even before I took initiation from him. But it made sense to my soul, and it heard. And I hung in there, wanting more and wanting the experience. And even now, as I'm reading, I'm still praying for that clarity and purity. So, who knows? It can happen. I think Prabhupada even mentioned somewhere in his talks, you can see God face to face. But some people saw, in the Psalms of the poetry, they think of it as poetry. But they don't understand that a living entity can have a deep relationship and connection with God. So when they think of the idea of God as a personality, they can only think in terms of a material personality. Such people think personality must mean material characteristics, attributes, etc. True personality is spiritual, and all that external personality are perverted reflections of these higher realms. He mentions again that in the Torah, it also mentions that Sarah had a relationship with the Lord like a mother. It mentions that God would appear to Enoch and Abraham, and they would have wonderful ongoing exchanges. In Christianity, great mystics such as Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross did not just refer to God as a light and sound, but they had personal experiences with the spiritual kingdom and with God as a lover. The New Testament emphasizes that the pure in heart shall see God. In John 6:46, it says, that not any man can know the Father but he who is of God, emphasizing that there is a certain level of consciousness that will enable us to connect with the Lord. So it's there. We go deep enough and we pay attention and also have a desire, that desire within to know God and reconnect with God. Reconnect. That's why we're here. Because we're here because we forgot. So it's to remember and reconnect. And it takes some study and gaining of knowledge so that the purity can begin to happen and we can move forward on that realm. It is unusual to not be able to have direct communication with one's beloved. The great 17th century saint Tukaram expresses the same point through poetry. This book is a little too low. For just 1 minute. I'm going to get here and get it right so we can hopefully stay eye-to-eye contact as much as possible. This is the poetry from Tukaram.
Tukaram.
Huh? Tukaram?
Tukaram.
Okay. Can water quaff itself? And I know what quaff means because I looked it up. Drink. Huh? Can trees taste the fruit they bear? He who worships God must stand distinct from him. So only shall we know the joyful love of God. He who worships God must stand distinct from him. So only shall he know the joyful love of God. For if he say that God and he are one, that joy, that love shall vanish instantly away. Pray no more for utter oneness with God. Where were the beauty if jewel and setting were one? The heat and the shade are two. If not, where were the comfort of the shade? Mother and child are two. If not, where were the love? When after being sundered they meet, what joy do they feel, the mother and child? Where were the joy if the two were one? Pray then no more for utter oneness with God. Nice poem. It is, the author continues that it is unnatural to not have association with one's authority. It is impersonal. It indicates a lack in reaching the highest expression. It is natural to reciprocate with one's beloved. It goes back to the Bible, telling us that the book of Revelation in the Bible explains that there will be many plagues, difficulty, famines, and so on. However, it says that the servants of God shall wear the mark of the Lord on their forehead and shall see his face. That's Revelation 22:4. It does not say that they shall see lights, feel the oneness of the universe, or lose their identity. It says that they will maintain their identity and see the face of God. The relationship and variegatedness in these lower realms where we are just perverted reflections of the perfect relationships in the higher realms. The higher states always involve specific relationships and ultimate love. How do we love a concept? We can have a general feeling, but love develops through specific knowledge and exchange. We love based on awareness. We love through service, relationships, and various interactions. Whenever we have feelings of attachment or aversion, specific attributes or experiences cause that love or distaste. Makes sense, doesn't it? There has to be another to love or to hate. And the Lord states in Bhagavad Gita 10:10 that He will give more knowledge to those who serve Him in love. His exact words are, I'm just going to give the English, to those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. The more we acquire bona fide and esoteric spiritual knowledge and act upon the knowledge, that's an important word, isn't it? Because many of us and many people, they read very spiritual books, if you will, esoteric books. They can quote to you verses and slokas and paragraphs and pages. But are they acting on what they have read or they're speaking? And what is that expression? Action speaks louder than words. So, if you acquire this knowledge and act upon that knowledge, the more we can experience a connection with the beloved. When you love someone, you want to know what they like, how you can serve them. For instance, if you know that they like a certain type of food, what do? You want to please them by offering that particular food. However, if you know they like soup, but you offer them a plate of rice, that does not indicate that you really care about their personal preferences. And this is what's coming to me with this, is why in our scriptures it stresses hearing about the Lord, and hearing about Him, reading about Him, talking about him, discussing him, because the more you hear and the more you talk about what you hear and try to act on what you're hearing, you're developing a relationship there. You've probably maybe been in experience, somebody will talk about a person, oh, he or she, oh, they're so charming, they're so nice, and when you talk to them, and oh, they're so caring, and it's like, oh, I'd like to meet that person. So as we study and read our scriptures and books and hear about the Supreme Lord, and now we're here, you're hearing about a personality, a person. I like to, when I'm discussing this with people and saying God is a person, of course not a gross material person, but a spiritual personality. And the Bible says we're made in the image and likeness of God. And I don't think anybody will disagree with that. So if we have personality, we got it from God. He has personality. That's why we call him the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if we have form, how did we get it? Because he's the creator of everything. So he has form, we have form. And that to me, when I first heard that, made real sense to me. So to the degree that you know the personality traits and preferences, you will create more union and togetherness. There will be much more appreciation because, why? Of the harmony and attentiveness. As we know more about our real identity, the identity of other living entities, and the real nature of the spiritual kingdom, we will be able to experience real spiritual relationships by taking away the coverings that obscure them. Does that make sense? I hope it does.
Can you read that again?
Read that again. Yes, sure. There will be much more appreciation because of the harmony and attentiveness as we know more about our real identity. And that, if you've been reading, if you read Bhagavad Gita, I just like going back there. If you come in not knowing, like Arjuna, it appears he forgot his real identity, and chapter 2, Krishna gives it to him, who he is, and how he is, and how important, and that's who we have to know with spirit soul. So as we know more about our real identity, and then the identity of other living entities, they too are spirit soul, and the real nature of the spiritual kingdom, where we all were at one time until we became envious of God and wanted to be the boss there too. But as we understand truly, we will be able to experience real spiritual relationship by taking away the coverings that obscure them. And this also means we don't have, well, we'd have to have it here in order to have it there. But in this material body, on this material plane, if we do know our true identity, our real identity in others, we can have those relationships here. I use an expression sometimes. I meet somebody, maybe first time, but there's such a connection. You've probably had that. And it's like, have I met you before? Do I know you? And if I can't recall, my thing is, we're spirit meeting spirit. And there's that recognition and appreciation of that individual. And then he gives an example here, you may have heard it, but it's to help us see if we can understand this personalism. He gives the example of a high court judge. And the different he gives it so that possibly we can better understand different concepts of Godhead. Now, a judge interacts on many different levels according to what? Relationship. Now, normally we think of judges as a person who has great authority and influence, huh? Here comes the judge, right? And everybody stands up, and it's quite welcoming. Even over life and death for some people. And in the courtroom, people must follow etiquette as they deal with him or her, right? Yes, Your Honor. You don't say, yeah, man. Yes, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. Theists normally conceive of God in this way. They think of the Lord primarily as the supreme authority, autocrat, who oversees the creation and dictates different orders. Of course, these are various aspects of a judge's responsibility. Now, the lawyer has a different relationship with the judge. Why? Well, lawyers honor the judge due to his superior position, but since they're also involved in law, they do not have an excessive mood of awe and reverence towards that judge. And since both the lawyer and the judge understand the law, to some extent they are bound in friendship. They both understand the law. Now, he said the judge has the most intimate relationship with his little grandson. When he goes home, takes off his formal robe, he plays with his grandson. And maybe the grandson jumps on his back and slaps him around. I saw this slap him around because I'm from the old school. What do you mean slap him around? But anyway, he's giving an example. And he's playing with him. It's a fun. They're enjoying each other, and it's not a vicious slapping around, you know. But in the courtroom, a person could be arrested or fined for treating the judge in such a manner. Can you imagine somebody trying to jump on his back and slapping him? Hey, man, what's happening? That would be the end of him. But, however, in a different environment with different people, there are different levels of relationships based on the quality of love and intimacy. And here he's really giving us, in that if you study Krishna book, or you study Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, or you've been studying this Vaishnava culture, you can understand he's saying that different levels of relationships and different actions in different levels of relationship. And we're talking about relationship with God, the spiritual world, and he's telling we can have these different relationships based on the quality of love and intimacy. He tells us that in Vaishnava scriptures, the descriptions of the Lord compare to this connection of the judge with his grandson. Therefore, it might come across as mythology. Some people might have a hard time envisioning the judge who sends people to jail, chastises other lawyers, or fines people, later sitting on the floor with his grandsons and getting slapped around. Theologies that deal with this idea of a personal God might come across as strange to those who normally view God as a judge and autocrat. They might not be able to easily change this conception. The judge has a relationship with his grandson that is based on love. There's that word again, love. It keeps coming up. Formality does not exist and would actually have a way of interfering with the natural flow of love. The highest level of love is spontaneous, invigorating, exhilarating, and void of formality. And what he's telling us, we can reach that level of love and have this experience with the Supreme Lord. The formalities stemming from awe and fear limit the relationship for those who view the judge in this way. And I want to go back. It's amazing how he gives us this in different ways. If you recall earlier, if you've been with us, when we were in the section, what section was that? Oh, I wanted to look at 89, page 89. I'm going to do this. When he was speaking about 4 types of motivated worship. The first one, remember, worship out of fear. It means that people serve the Lord in order to avoid suffering in hell. They mostly follow a religious path because they believe they will suffer intensely if they do not worship God. There's no love there. That's fear. And there's no understanding or connection. And that type of worship really involves more fear than knowledge. And then he also, in looking at different types of worship, when he spoke of worship out of genuine attraction. And here comes love, means that the lover goes out of his or her way for the beloved because he or she genuinely wants to honor the beloved's presence. When the knowledge and love is deep and the person has transcended the gross and subtle levels of alignment, the loving exchanges become spontaneous and exhilarating. And then he reminds us that the soul is Satchitananda, or full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. And self-realization does not mean that we have to learn who we are. Rather, it means uncovering, because who we are is eternal, always eternal. We just have to uncover that part of ourselves, that actual identity of ourselves. How? By freeing ourselves of superfluous involvements in our lives. It involves removing the acculturation forced upon us by material energy. So that's how important that is. I want to stop now. Are there any comments, questions on these wonderful, glorious words of Bhakti-tirtha Swami?
Yes. Bhakti Carol says, anthropomorphism is the attribution of human characteristics to non-human creatures and beings, phenomena, material states, and objects or abstract concepts.
Bhakti Carol, what's going on, girl? Where did you get that phrase from? Was it something we covered? Was it something I read? Or what exactly are you? Is that a comment? What's up, Carol? Carol? Huh? Bhakti and Carol? Was that a comment? What'd she say? You know, I keep waiting for an answer back. Forgive me. And I'm not looking at the chat room, so I don't see your what you're saying. And sometimes when you hear something, it takes a while for it to connect in the brain.
She says, not a question to Mother and Johnny, she was questioning someone in the chat room. No, not a comment.
Oh, so that statement is to somebody. So you've been having another conversation? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Kremlin
made the statement, anthropomorphic characteristics of God.
And then she responded with that. I would like any comments, questions based on what I'm sharing with you from Bhakti Tirtha Swami. And I would like to suggest, I'm so thankful and happy that you all are out there, but I'm glad I'm not looking at the chat room because I get a little confused. There's certain points, concepts that the author has brought out, and I've been endeavoring to bring forth the whole of knowing who we are and our connection with God. And okay, so please, can you kind of wait until maybe I'm finished reading? You make your note if you want to present that or if you want to clarify something. But please try to stay with me with what I'm putting out. Okay, Kremlin. I'm glad you're there, but let's try to stay with where I am. Okay, because I'm making an effort myself to make sure I understand and have grasped enough that I can share with you from my understanding. And I'm also a student. As I'm reading, I'm endeavoring to learn, to grow spiritually, because that's why we're here. And that's why he's giving us these points, and he gives it in such, I feel, dynamic fashion to really understand who we are as living, eternal living beings, and who God is. And here he's giving us hopefully an understanding that God is a person, the supreme personality, and we have relationships with him. So there's no anti-morphological.
I think I understand now why he kind of questioned. You were reading how there were saints who met God face to face and had relationships with God. So Kremlin seemed to question if that was an anthropomorphic characteristics of God, meaning attributing human characteristics to a non-human creature, being, phenomena, material state, or object, or abstract concept.
Who's the non-human?
God. It's a kind of question.
Okay. God, non-human, but spiritual, in a form. And those in human body having a connection, a relationship with God. Is that what he...
Something like that.
Something like that.
Sri Upanishad describes that.
Sri Upanishad describes that.
Yeah.
Okay, teach me. Who said that? You or Kremlin?
I'm saying.
Okay,
okay. Saying, not that it's that the form of God is not real, but that sometimes people will say that attributing human qualities and sentiment to God is anthropomorphism. That's
Okay, maybe you can help me. This is what comes up. What does he say in the Bhagavad Gita about those who see him as a human? Remember, there's a quote in Bhagavad Gita for those God, because he did come to earth. He was here. He was with Arjuna, but as he's in a spiritual form, although we saw it like a human form. And he makes a comment on that. Is Bhuvan Mahan on tonight? Oh, there we go. That's my job. I called you today and I didn't get any answer. And Krishna quotes how some see him as an ordinary human. Do you know that quote or remember that quote? Yeah, something in reference to that. But what we're trying to identify is those who had that connection with him, as he states here in the book, they've reached a state of purity so that they're meeting at the spiritual level, even though in their human body. Right now I'm reading Volume 2, which is commentary on the Madhurya Kandambini, which gives us the stages to reach pure love of God. And in there, I remember hearing the classes, I haven't gotten there yet, as you go through the different stages from faith to association to meeting a spiritual master to becoming steady in your practice to getting rid of unwanted desires and habits, and then you become steady and fixed, and then you acquire a taste, and then the bhava, the emotion begins, love begins, and finally you reach prema. In that Madhurya Kandambini, when the devotee got to those stages at the end, the bhava and the prema, he was still in a human body, and yet he saw the Lord. The Lord wiped his tears away when he realized the ecstatic. We've been reading how ecstatic love can be. And then he fainted, and then the Lord called him or touched him, and he came back. And he was still in his human body. But he had reached that level of consciousness where his spirit so met with the Lord. So that's what comes up for that part. Is there any other comment or question?
No, I'm just sending them a link to Sri Upanishad that they can look at later.
Okay, you're getting a link. Isn't that what a technician I have? I'm going to anchor her if she ever talks about leaving me. Okay, who's out there? I'm at that point. I think I'll stop now. Next week we'll begin with the language of the heart. We're still on the chapter, different conceptions of religion. And we will definitely finish this chapter next week. And guess what the next chapter is? You got the book? The next chapter, a spiritual response to terrorism. But we need, again, he chose this as looking at the different conceptions of religion, so that when we get to looking at possible terrorism and those in different religious, we've had some build up to it. So who's out there want to say Haribo or good evening or Hare Krishna, or just give me your name and where you are? Anybody?
Bhuvan Mohan says, please send Mother Indrani my humble obeisances and many thanks.
Thank you for being there, Bhuvan. I was a little concerned today.
Right now online is Bhaktin Carol and Kremlin. And Bhaktin Shruti.
Oh, okay. Bhaktin Shruti. Hedi Hedi Bo. That's it. Kremlin, thank you for coming. And Bhakti and Carol, I'm glad you're hanging in there with us. So we'll have a wonderful week. Take what you're able to get from these readings, and as he said, and act on them in your daily life to see how you're becoming purified yourselves and how you're recognizing who you are as a spirit soul and recognizing other and reconnecting with the Lord in the heart. How's that? All right? And please try to, if any special realization comes, write them down and maybe you can share with me next week. Thank you all so much for coming and for being there. Hare Krishna. Good night. Hari Hari Bol.